Hello from Buckingham. Welcome along to the programme.
First tonight, the growing debate over our future energy sources.
With the new government promising to be the greenest ever, the East could find itself at the forefront of a renewable energy revolution.
Supporters claim this would mean cleaner living and thousands of jobs for the region, while opponents say renewable energy sources are intrusive and expensive.
Our correspondent Neil Bradford joins us now from the site of a new wind farm near Milton Keynes. So, Neil, is this an opportunity not to be missed or a major project that Britain just can't afford?
Well, that depends, of course, largely on who you talk to. Environmentalists say projects like this one are the key to our economic recovery in the region, a way of creating hundreds of new jobs. Now, economists say no matter how well-intentioned the government are with their green priorities, they're simply unrealistic because their priority will be plugging the country's massive deficit. And we mustn't forget projects like wind farms, offshore wind farms and wave-generated energy projects aren't without controversy. That said, there is an industry there ripe for growth, ripe for investment. The question is, where is that money going to come from?
Everybody knows mixing the colours blue and yellow makes green. Perhaps the same is true of politicians. The new coalition government, made up of yellow Liberal Democrats and blue Conservatives, have no fewer than 20 green priorities, among them renewable energy. Environmental campaigners say it could be the key to economic recovery in our region.
This is an absolutely vital time. We've got a rapid growth in renewable energy. Now, if we get affected by the concerns that there are going to be significant public sector cuts, but if the intervention that's needed to accelerate this technology doesn't happen now, then we're just going to see overseas technology being purchased and gaining very little jobs.
The issue of replacing nuclear power stations like Sizewell in Suffolk continues to divide the two parties. While the Lib Dems oppose a replacement programme, the Conservatives support one, but say they won't be providing any public money. It means projects like this wind farm being built in Buckinghamshire are a more favourable option, among politicians at least. In many cases, the public still appear sceptical. Today, residents opposing a wind farm near Gravely in Cambridgeshire protested at the start of an 8-day planning inquiry. They're opposed to plans for 8 turbines they say will be twice the height of Ely Cathedral.
There are hundreds of people within 2 kilometres of the wind farm itself, and they will be affected. There will be issues about noise, there will be issues about health. There's lots of issues with regards to the sheer size of the turbines that are being proposed here. Particularly they're being 417 feet high.
We've chosen it to make sure there's minimal impact on landscape, ecology, there's enough separation from housing that we can meet the noise distances agreed with, noise limits agreed with the council. In fact, the council themselves identify this site as an area capable of taking up to 12 wind turbines.
The 7 wind turbines here at Emberton near Milton Keynes will be fully operational by September of this year. They'll produce enough electricity to power more than 8,000 homes.
Economists, though, warn that all future environmental projects are at risk from looming public spending cuts.
I think the private sector will have to drive this now, and I hope the government will bring in some tax incentives to make it more attractive to the private firms to do it. But let's be very clear, this government doesn't have the money to do it, and therefore I think it'll be of second priority.
With the country's bank balance heavily in the red, it is the financial landscape that will ultimately dictate whether the future landscape of the East will include more wind farms. Neil Bradford, Anglia News, Emberton, near Milton Keynes.
It was an historic day for our region's new MPs. All 25 of them, they took up their seats in Parliament for the very first time.
They saw Buckingham MP John Bercow re-elected as the Speaker of the House, despite a few objections.
Our political correspondent Matthew Hudson reports now on a dramatic day at Westminster and how the new intake have been coping with their first day at the office.
This will soon be routine for new Labour MP Gavin Shuker. Luton South now counts as a London constituency, so he doesn't qualify for second home or overnight accommodation allowances. Part of the fallout from the expenses scandal, which will affect many MPs, new and old. Mr Shuker, though, doesn't mind.
Well, you know, I think it's inevitable after what happened in the expenses crisis that certain things were going to be taken away from sitting MPs. For me, I'm quite glad that I get to be rooted in Luton, which is where I was born, grew up, I'm really pleased that I get to go backwards and forwards on the train, but for other MPs, it will be a big difference.
Ironically, it was Mr Shuker's predecessor, Margaret Moran, who did as much as any MP to help the expenses gravy train hit the buffers. Of course, tightening expenses and office costs isn't the only change. The first coalition since the Second World War means there are some unlikely political bedfellows. Conservative Chloe Smith from Norwich North and Liberal Democrat Simon Wright from Norwich South now find themselves on the same side.
Simon Wright and I will work together closely where required, and I think that can be true on both national and local issues. I think it is essential to have MPs, not only in the city actually, but also in the county, and indeed wider in the region, who will get on and work together in the interests of what needs to be done.
For Mr Wright, it provides possibilities he never expected.
It's going to be an amazing feeling. I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into this role, and there's going to be a lot of emotion running through my veins when I go into that chamber for the first time.
Emmeline Pankhurst and the suffragettes bear testimony to how Parliament has evolved over the centuries, but rarely have the changes we've seen been as seismic as this year. Not only do we have the first coalition government in more than 50 years, but the fallout from the expenses scandal will fundamentally alter the way our MPs operate. Who knows what other revolutions this Parliament might yet throw up. It doesn't take long to find out, with a modest rebellion this afternoon. After a general election, the Speaker of the House of Commons is traditionally reappointed unopposed. But today, Buckingham MP John Bercow faced calls for an election. Among those who wanted him replaced was Bedfordshire Conservative Nadine Dorries. Mr Bercow survived the attempt to unseat him and was returned unopposed. And, as another tradition dictates, he was dragged symbolically to the Speaker's chair. A new government and a fresh start, Conservatives and Liberals know the eyes of the nation are fixed on them and expect them to make the coalition work. Matthew Hudson, Anglia News, Westminster.
Next, the